Be prepared. This was the Boy Scouts' motto. The Scout law listed qualities such as trustworthiness, loyalty, and kindness. Nick found himself reflecting on these principles after stumbling upon an email on his wife's iPhone. Normally, Nick wouldn't invade anyone's privacy, especially his wife's. However, he needed to know the name of her hotel for an upcoming trip she was taking, and he couldn't recall it. Their recent arguments about his lack of attentiveness only added to his urgency. Their impending separation, the longest since their marriage 5 years ago, prompted Nick to consider sending flowers as a romantic gesture. Little did he know that Linda, his wife, would be spending this time with Dwayne in Paris, the city of love. Discovering their affair through Linda's unsecured phone, Nick was shocked by the explicit emails they exchanged. What baffled him even more was that Linda and Dwayne used their work email accounts, despite being legal professionals well aware of the consequences. Nick's intuition had sensed something awry when Linda initially mentioned the trip. Despite her flippant tone and dismissive demeanor, Nick's acute listening skills, honed through years of legal practice, picked up on the inconsistencies. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, even before uncovering the affair. Their marital troubles aside, Nick's discovery led to a deeper understanding of human nature and the importance of vigilance, even in seemingly secure relationships. As he navigated the complexities of betrayal and deceit, Nick's adherence to the principles of honesty and integrity remained unwavering. Nick had found his wife's response peculiar, but he never expected this devastating revelation. The email exchange he was now reading felt like a dagger to his heart. "Why don't you just ditch the Boy Scouts so we can spend more time together without worrying?" Dwayne had written. "He makes me feel safe," Linda replied. "So why are you cheating on him with me every chance you get?" "You turn me on." Smiley face emoji. Nick felt a surge of conflicting emotions as he processed the betrayal. As an experienced litigator, his first instinct was to preserve the evidence. He quickly printed the emails and stashed them in his bag. But before taking any action, he needed to think. Violence was tempting, but he knew it wasn't the solution. As a lawyer, he relied on his intellect, not brute force. Besides, Linda would be back from a run soon. He focused on his next steps. Finding the hotel was crucial, though not for sending flowers. He had to know, even if he wasn't sure why yet. La Clef Tour Eiffel. Near the Trocadero, across from the Eiffel Tower. He made a mental note, knowing it would be important later. Next, he researched Virginia divorce law. Adultery was grounds for divorce and could impact alimony and property division. However, there were defenses, like condonation, resuming sexual relations after discovering the infidelity. Nick knew he had to leave the house quickly, without confrontation. He planned to end the marriage on his terms, controlling the narrative without any surprises. It meant lying, a departure from the Scout law, but Nick saw it as a necessary strategy in this battle. In wartime, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies, Churchill had said. Nick's lies now served a higher purpose, not bound by oath but by the need for justice in this war of betrayal. Nick went to the master bedroom and swiftly packed his belongings, placing the suitcases near the front door. As he gathered important documents, bank statements, credit card statements, and more, Linda returned from a run. Spotting her in the kitchen, he feigned a stressed demeanor. Linda, with her hair tied back, looked attractive, but Nick felt nothing but disdain for her. He realized then that any love he once felt had faded away. "I have news. I'm headed to Paris," he announced, a forced smile on his face. Linda's expression turned pale at the mention of Paris, but it quickly shifted when Nick clarified he meant Paris, Virginia. He explained about an urgent work trip due to an insurance case, masking his true intentions with a fabricated story about his schedule. "Poor thing," Linda responded with feigned concern, before making a snide comment about job prospects. Nick resisted the urge to lash out and quickly excused himself, avoiding physical contact. Linda attempted a hug, but he dodged it and retreated to his office, struggling to contain his anger. Leaving the house, Linda asked about dinner plans, but Nick declined, citing the need to hit the road immediately for work. As he loaded his car, Linda bid him farewell with a gesture for a kiss, but Nick feigned illness to avoid it. Driving away, Nick hoped Linda would believe his excuses for his sudden departure, knowing he couldn't handle any more confrontation. However, he suspected she was already making plans, perhaps with Dwayne, taking advantage of his absence. Nick drove to a nearby strip mall and settled into a coffee shop, where he found solace in the act of putting his thoughts on paper. Reconciliation with Linda was not even a consideration. Retribution was the only path he saw ahead. As he pondered his next moves, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Buford," the caller began without preamble. "I'm Sam Granger. I'm in the business of buying old houses to build McMansions. I'd like to purchase your house to tear it down." Nick couldn't help but feel a twisted satisfaction at the idea of selling the house, especially since Linda had chosen it. He arranged to meet Sam on Sunday, subtly hinting at his plan to handle the closing himself. After ending the call, Nick formulated a plan. Linda may feel safe with her Boy Scout husband, but she had no clue about his strategic thinking inspired by military scouting. He resolved to gather intel, starting with a call to Frank. "Frank, I need a favor. And I need it now," he said as he prepared to execute his next move. Frank Barry, a private investigator, had been recommended to Nick by a law school classmate. Nick often engaged in pro bono legal work alongside his corporate law duties, and Frank's assistance in a previous case had been invaluable. When Nick reached out to Frank for help with his marital situation, Frank readily agreed to assist, owing Nick for the positive publicity from a previous case. Nick explained his suspicions about his wife's infidelity to Frank, who was surprised at the boldness of Nick's wife. Nick mentioned the treehouse in their backyard as a potential vantage point for surveillance, and Frank decided to set up a camera outside the house for added monitoring. After speaking with Frank, Nick called his divorce lawyer, Harry, to discuss his plans to proceed with the divorce. Harry assured Nick that they could handle the legal aspects effectively, emphasizing the importance of gathering clear and convincing evidence of adultery. Lastly, Nick contacted Maggie, a past acquaintance, to seek her assistance. Maggie expressed little sympathy for Nick's situation, citing her own dating life and lack of emotional investment in Nick's marital problems. With these arrangements in place, Nick prepared to navigate the complexities of his impending divorce and the evidence-gathering process with the help of his trusted allies. And I'm sure he's a lucky guy. "Look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we fooled around and let it ruin the friendship. I'm also sorry that I let Linda kick you out of my life when I thought there was a chance that we could get back to being friends. But as a friend, I need your help now." "Asshole." Nick let her stew. "What do you need, Nick?" He told her. There was silence on the line. Then the laughter. "I'm in," she said after she calmed down, but he could still hear the smile in her voice. "You always did make me laugh." "Thanks, Maggie. When the dust settles, you'll have to introduce me to Mr. Lucky so I can congratulate him on his fine taste and take you both out to dinner." "It's a date," she said. He needed somewhere to hide out for a while and to plan, so he found a long-term stay hotel out past the Beltway in Fairfax, far enough from his and Linda's usual haunts that he was not at risk of being seen, got settled, and then went for something to eat. He was not really hungry, but knew that he needed something in his stomach to absorb the alcohol he planned on drinking. A restaurant called El Mariachi was across the street from the hotel. That would do the trick because frijoles and cheese would be easy to vomit later. As the hostess seated him in a booth, he saw the bartender looking at him. He seemed vaguely familiar, but Nick put it out of his head. He had enough to worry about at the moment. Seeing pupusas on the menu meant that the restaurant was a Central American place pretending to be Mexican. Most Americans didn't know the difference. He ordered some cheap tequila with the food. He knew the hangover would be brutal the next day, but considered the pain part of the rite of passage. The waitress returned with a bottle of excellent top-shelf tequila and a highball glass. When Nick looked up at the waitress, she just pointed to the bartender, who saluted him. Nick acknowledged the salute and poured himself a generous drink when the bartender went back to serving other customers. It took a moment, but Nick remembered who he was. He recalled the bartender as one of the members of the public who sat through the Rivera divorce hearings as well as the criminal proceedings that Nick had attended. He was always in the last row by himself. No one ever sat next to him. His client Sonia's daughter hugged him once, but when Nick asked Sonia who it was, she got very quiet and said he was just a friend of the family. Nick ate in silence, making notes on a legal pad and drinking more tequila. When the waitress cleared his dirty plates, he went to the restroom. He was conscious that things seemed to be moving around like he was on a ship when he walked. He needed to steady himself against the wall while he did his business. He then returned to the booth, taking extra care to be steady, and found the bartender sitting in his booth on the opposite bench. "Senor Nick, nice to see you," he said, reaching out to take Nick's hand and shake it vigorously. Nick sat down and waited. "I never thanked you for helping my cousin out with that bastard she was married to." Nick tried to protest that it was nothing and just doing what little he could, but the bartender ignored him. "He got badly beaten up in prison. Did you know that? Really badly. They don't think he'll walk again. Or eat solid food." The bartender had a slight smile as he told Nick. Nick felt a chill as he looked at the bartender. "I hadn't heard that," Nick replied. The bartender shrugged. "That's old news. What brings you to El Mariachi alone on a Saturday night? Where's your wife?" Nick met the bartender's gaze. His smile was not mocking but rather knowing. Nick couldn't fathom why the bartender would ask such a peculiar question. How did he even know Nick was married? Then, Nick recalled Linda showing up unexpectedly at one of the hearings and kissing him afterward. The bartender must have been there too. "She and I are having some issues," Nick admitted. He saw no point in concealing the truth. "Is she seeing someone else?" The bartender's smile held a hint of understanding. Nick was rendered speechless. "I'm not a lawyer, Don Nicholas, but I do know that if you want to keep a secret, you shouldn't leave evidence lying around," the bartender remarked, nodding towards Nick's notepad. It contained notes on adultery, doodles of Dwayne being stabbed, the name Linda circled with a slash through it, and a to-do list including the phrase "burn the bitch." Nick shrugged. Poor security measures, but at least he wasn't betraying any client confidences. Every man in your situation has to decide what he truly wants. What is your ultimate desire, Senor Nick? If you could seek revenge without considering the money, what would it be? Nick didn't hesitate. "I want to punch her nose so hard it breaks. And I want to blacken both her eyes. She has a beautiful face and expressive eyes. I want to ruin that." The bartender's smile widened, then he chuckled and shook his head. "You, my friend, are not thinking clearly. People who seek violent revenge like that end up in prison. You don't want to go to prison. Unless it's to visit your clients and then leave, right?" The bartender paused, regarding Nick with sympathy. Nick nodded in agreement. "But maybe I can help. You helped my cousin when she needed it. She could have asked me for help, but for various reasons, she didn't. You stepped in and took care of her." Nick attempted to interject. He had Frank gather evidence, but it was the police who did the heavy lifting. It didn't hurt that Nick had a partner from his firm, a former assistant United States attorney, quietly speak with the Commonwealth's attorney to ensure the criminal case was handled properly. Nick only accompanied his client to ensure she received proper respect from the prosecutors. Her divorce was straightforward after her husband was convicted in the criminal case. The bartender waved off his protests. "Helping forgotten people like my cousin is noteworthy on its own. I'm indebted to you on behalf of my family. I repay my debts. I believe you could use some assistance." Nick regarded him thoughtfully. "I'm afraid I don't remember your name," Nick admitted. The bartender's smile turned into a sinister grin. "Some call me El Diablo." "The devil?" The bartender nodded. "That's what those who dislike me say. To my friends, I'm Jose Garcia." Nick smiled in return. "What's the price for a favor from the devil? Do I need to sell my soul?" El Diablo's grin faded, and Nick's smile followed suit. "Let's be serious. You're a lawyer. You don't have a soul." El Diablo's smile returned, and Nick realized he was jesting. "Consider it professional courtesy, Senor Nick. Now, just give me your address, your wife's name, and her daily routine." What do you plan to do? I have some ideas. But as they say, ignorance is bliss. It's better for you not to know too much. And make sure you can account for your whereabouts for the next few months. Get a burner phone so we can stay in touch, and leave the number here at the bar. And don't come back here again. Trust me, it's for the best. Nick briefed El Diablo on hiring the private investigator, his strategy to be away from the house until Linda's departure for France, and her travel arrangements. El Diablo was familiar with the hotel in Paris but didn't reveal how. Just one question, Senor Nick. Is there any chance of reconciliation? Forgiveness? Mercy? I don't want to hear about second thoughts later. El Diablo's serious gaze locked onto Nick's eyes. Nick met his stare. After a deep breath, Nick paused to assess his feelings. The path ahead was clear. Trust and loyalty, once pillars of his marriage, were now absent. Linda had extinguished the love, replaced by hatred. Perhaps with time and reflection, he would become indifferent. But not now. None, Nick affirmed. El Diablo visibly relaxed. Good. You can leave everything to me. When the waitress brought the bill, El Diablo dismissed her but allowed Nick to tip generously. He also permitted Nick to take the tequila bottle, cautioning him to moderate his consumption. Nick needed to stay sharp for the coming battle. Somehow, Nick woke up Sunday morning without much of a hangover. He arrived at Harry's law office by 10 a.m., finding Frank already there. Sorry, Nick, Frank began. She's definitely with the guy. In your bed. He was there 2 hours after I arrived and was still there when I left this morning. We got high-quality footage. I made a copy for you, but you might not want to watch it. Harry interjected, it's probably best if you don't watch. We don't want you doing something rash and ending up in jail. Don't worry, Nick replied, taking the DVD from Frank. Just give me the gist. I climbed up to the treehouse like you said, and they were all over each other. Clear shots of their faces and, well, the rest of them. Definitely engaging in sexual activity. From what I could tell, it seemed purely physical. Not much conversation. They just went at it like rabbits. I don't know if that changes your plans. No, it doesn't. What positions did they try? Cowgirl, doggy style, reverse cowgirl. They both seem to have a lot of stamina. Thanks. That just makes it worse. Sorry about that. By the way, I know Linda personally from that party you hosted last year, so I can identify her. We ran the guy's license plates, Dwayne Martin. We know he works with her. We don't know how long it's been going on, but it seems to be clear and convincing evidence to me. Oh, and we've got a camera on the front of the house covering the driveway and garage so we can tell when they're coming and going. I'll email you the remote link to the live stream on our secure server. I talked to Harry, and I'm going to write a report and supporting affidavit so he can file it. Sorry again, man. Frank shook hands with both Harry and Nick and left the office. So, what do you want to do? Harry asked. File for divorce on the basis of adultery. But don't serve her. Harry looked at Nick without expression. Trust me, Harry. When I hear those words, I start to get an upset stomach. I don't want you doing anything stupid here. I anticipate that everything is going to go more smoothly than you imagine. Harry grimaced. Look, Harry, just file it on Monday afternoon, right before the clerk's office closes. Let me know the docket number. I'll take care of the rest. Just remember, Nick. I don't do criminal law. Not well anyway. If you need to get out of some jam, I am not going to be able to help. You're going to be pleasantly surprised, Nick said as he walked out the door. Nick's next stop was a meeting with Sam Granger. It was a very productive meeting at which Nick learned that they could sell the house for more than $100,000 more than the mortgage, all without real estate agent commissions. Linda would be thrilled. If she knew. Nick promised to get back with the proper paperwork as soon as possible to close the deal. On the way out of Sam's office, Nick looked at his phone. No messages or calls. She must still be with Dwayne. Nick took the opportunity to call his boss, Sven, and tell him that he needed 2 weeks off immediately or else he was quitting. Sven immediately panicked because Nick was the only one who knew what was going on with the case and agreed. Fortunately, they were in a slow period in Sven's case, so he could give Nick some slack. With the groundwork laid, Nick returned to his hotel to get his real work done. By Monday evening, he was ready. Linda had left voicemails Sunday night and Monday night that he had not answered. He was saving all his energy for Tuesday morning. Thanks to Frank's camera in front of the house, Nick knew that Dwayne had spent Monday night there and, based on Dwayne's stay from Sunday night to Monday morning, that he would probably leave around 8 a.m. to go to work. Linda then would leave around 8:30 a.m. So, at 7 a.m., Nick came through the front door, calling out, "Honey, I'm home." He heard sudden footsteps upstairs, and then Linda came down the stairs in her robe, looking disheveled and shocked. "Honey, what a surprise," she said, trying to sound cheerful, but barely keeping it together and just as clearly on the verge of complete panic. "I thought you were out until Friday. You didn't answer my calls." "Sorry," Nick replied cheerfully. "You know how it gets on the road." Nick chose to ignore the wine glasses in the living room and proceeded directly to the dining room. Linda stood in the doorway, observing Nick closely, strategizing her next move to prevent him from ascending the stairs where Dwayne was undoubtedly hiding. A sudden knock at the door caught her off guard. "Can you get that, honey?" Nick requested. Meanwhile, he busied himself arranging papers on the dining room table, feigning ignorance of Linda's tense demeanor as she squared her shoulders and went to answer the door, half expecting a process server with divorce papers. To her surprise, it was Maggie, who entered as Linda opened the door, offering a simple hello. Linda followed with curiosity as Maggie seated herself at the dining room table and opened a case. "Apologies, hon," Nick interjected. "But I'm uncertain when I'll have another opportunity, and considering our upcoming trip, updating powers of attorney seemed prudent. Also, I stumbled upon a refinancing opportunity over the weekend, and since we'll both be away, I thought it best to take care of it now. Sorry for the short notice." He attempted to appear apologetic. "And who might this be?" Linda inquired, gesturing toward Maggie, the throbbing in her temples subsiding slightly. "I'm Maggie." "Maggie is a notary," Nick clarified. Linda visibly relaxed. Despite her hidden lover upstairs, the situation hadn't completely spiraled out of control yet. "That's my Boy Scout." "Always prepared," Linda remarked with a grin, though her eyes remained vigilant. "That's just my nature, hon." Nick handed Linda a pen and began arranging papers in front of her. "The flags indicate where to sign. Feel free to review them at your leisure." "I trust you," Linda replied with a broad smile, swiftly signing the documents before her. Nick prayed she truly did, as he would be in trouble otherwise. But as the saying goes, fortune favors the bold. After Linda signed each document, Nick organized them and passed them to Maggie, who notarized them. "Mrs. Buford, may I see a form of photo identification?" Maggie requested. Linda retrieved her driver's license from her purse. Maggie snapped a picture with her phone and recorded the details in her notarial log. Linda offered coffee, which both Nick and Maggie declined as Maggie completed her notarizations while Nick sorted everything into folders. Linda's gaze repeatedly drifted upstairs, anticipating Nick's attempt to ascend and contemplating her next move. Maggie departed after stowing her tools, exchanging a smile with Nick when Linda wasn't looking. Nick then excused himself, claiming a teleconference in his basement office. Linda relaxed, believing she had time to discreetly usher Dwayne out and erase any evidence of his presence before Nick resurfaced. Nick pretended not to hear Dwayne's heavy footsteps as he fled down the stairs or the garage door opening as Dwayne's car departed. When he heard the master bath shower running, Nick gathered his belongings, exited through the cellar door, and drove away without a word to his unsuspecting wife. 2 hours later, following a satisfying diner breakfast, Nick sat in Harry's office, who appeared stunned. "So, you're saying you managed to get your wife to sign a CC 1406 form accepting service of the divorce complaint and waiving future service of process and notice for any upcoming proceedings?" Harry questioned incredulously. "Yes. The properly notarized form is right here. Nick gestured toward the document. You're also telling me that you persuaded your wife, a seasoned litigator, to sign a property settlement agreement relinquishing all proceeds from the house sale, cars, jewelry, and allowing you complete discretion over her personal effects disposal, without requiring any alimony payments from you? Harry continued, scrutinizing the papers. She earns more than I do anyway, Nick replied calmly. According to these documents, she's willing to leave the marriage with only about $125,000 in retirement contributions and around $200,000 in debt. Is that accurate? Harry clarified. She's always been generous, Nick affirmed. Harry furrowed his brows at Nick and focused back on the papers. And you also secured her signature on an affidavit admitting to adultery and confirming her lover's presence in the marital bedroom during the signing, as well as authenticating an email discussing her affair. That's what you're telling me? Harry questioned, astounded. The documents speak for themselves, Nick replied, his expression void of emotion. Harry glanced at the papers, then at Nick, attempting to suppress a smile before swiveling in his chair. Fine. I'll file everything. You're a respected member of the bar and a law school friend. How was I supposed to know this was all fabricated? It looked legitimate to me. If anyone should face consequences, it's Nicholas A. Buford, J.D., Esquire. See where I'm going with this, Nick? Harry remarked. Yeah, Nick acknowledged. If needed, will the notary testify that Linda signed these documents? Harry inquired. Yes, she will, Nick confirmed. Will she confirm that Linda reviewed the documents carefully? Harry pressed. I can't speculate on her testimony, but Linda is experienced in litigation, so I'm sure she gave them due consideration. The notary will attest to witnessing Linda's signature on each document, Nick stated. All right then. I'll file everything today, along with Frank's affidavit and report. I'll try to keep it off the electronic docket for now. We don't want this getting public attention yet, do we? Harry suggested. No, Nick agreed. Linda's leaving for Paris in a couple of weeks. The longer we keep this discreet, the better. Do you know anyone at the circuit court? Do you remember Seth? Harry inquired. He was a day student a year after us, struggling to land a law firm job. Now, he's clerking at the circuit court, trying to boost his resume. He might help expedite things. But if a judge insists on live testimony, this could all collapse. Linda will need to decide not to fight it for some fraud on the court reason once she realizes what's happening. If it goes south at that point, I might have to withdraw as your attorney. Fair enough. Someday, you can share the full story with me. But not now. Over the next 2 weeks, Nick kept Linda at a distance. He sent her sporadic text messages about his busy schedule but avoided her calls. As time passed, her calls dwindled. You really rattled her, Frank remarked at the end of the week. According to our video feed, Dwayne hasn't been to the house since you showed up and caught them on Tuesday morning. They might be meeting elsewhere during the week or at his place, but not here. I'll keep you updated. The only change was Nick discreetly returning to the house when Linda was away to retrieve important financial documents and signing a home sale contract with Sam Granger, set to close the first week of Linda's Paris trip. Otherwise, Nick filled his days with gym visits, leisure reading, and contemplation about his chaotic life. He extended his leave from work with Sven's reluctant approval. She's back to seeing him in the house, Frank reported one Saturday, a week before Linda's Paris departure. Thanks for the update, Nick replied, unfazed. He had already decided to discard rather than sell the tainted sheets when he sold the house. He had also watched the video Frank provided earlier, understanding their attraction. Dwayne, a gym enthusiast, was a few years younger and focused on his physique, while Nick lacked a chiseled abdomen. Linda seemed drawn to his superficial qualities, which Nick found unappealing. Before he knew it, Linda embarked on her Paris trip. Nick, informed by Frank's operative, swiftly took action. He gathered Linda's clothes in the living room, packed his belongings, and arranged for movers to store her clothes and relocate his possessions to a new apartment. With Sam Granger's assistance, Nick easily sold the furniture. When the house was finally vacant, Nick took a final stroll around before completing his last task. He meticulously gathered the wedding photos, album, and Linda's bridal gown, proceeding to the fire pit on the patio beneath the treehouse. Carefully, he arranged the photos and album atop the charcoal, added the gown and lighter fluid, then ignited the match. Watching it all burn, Nick was pleased with the video's detailed coverage, even capturing the nuances of each photo as it joined the flames. A day later, Nick closed the sale of his marital home, utilizing his wife's power of attorney to sign as her attorney-in-fact. Her failure to review the documents she signed proved beneficial. With the financial power of attorney, Nick deposited the home sale proceeds into his personal account after endorsing on his wife's behalf, subsequently closing the joint accounts. Within 3 days, while Linda was still in France, the construction crew leveled the house and cleared the debris, commencing site preparation. Unfortunately, the beloved tree with the children's treehouse had to be removed to make way for a gazebo in the new plat. However, construction abruptly halted when the entire site of Nick and Linda's former home became a bare square of dirt due to a permitting issue. Nick and his law school friend, employed in the county permitting office, anticipated resolution shortly after Linda's return from France upon receiving and approving the necessary forms. Throughout this period, Nick avoided communication with Linda, refraining from answering calls, emails, or voicemails. El Diablo contacted him on the burner phone, mentioning Linda and Dwayne's apparent stress and suggesting suspicion on Linda's part. Nick inquired about El Diablo's insight, to which he cryptically referred to his extensive network, even in Europe. El Diablo then proposed finding a recipient for Linda's engagement and wedding rings, to which Nick vehemently objected. 2 days before Linda's return from Paris, Nick received the divorce decree unexpectedly quickly, courtesy of Seth, without further details from Harry. Relieved and surprised, Nick received a copy to send to his ex-wife. Exiting Harry's office, Nick's phone rang with an unfamiliar number, revealing El Diablo's voice on the other end. "Nick, you need a break. Right now. Go somewhere with lots of people who know you and can vouch for your whereabouts." El Diablo ended the call, prompting Nick to realize it had been a while since he'd seen his college friends in New York City. With their light schedules in the coming days, he boarded an Amtrak train that same day. He attended shows, visited museums, and enjoyed lunches, coffees, and dinners with various friends, often paying by credit card and generously tipping at his hotel to ensure staff recognition. Meanwhile, he express-mailed a DVD copy showing him burning Linda's wedding dress and album to her parents' house. Late Sunday afternoon, while savoring coffee and cake in Little Italy, Nick's phone rang. It was his father-in-law. "Nick? Where are you?" "Linda's in the hospital." "Yeah? What happened?" "She returned from her trip on Friday but was kidnapped from the airport with a coworker. They were drugged and released this morning. The coworker was badly beaten, and Linda." His father-in-law's voice wavered. Once sympathetic, Nick now felt differently. "What about Linda?" "She woke up covered in tattoos saying awful things about her, and then she was assaulted." Impressive, Nick thought. A perfect finale to the ordeal. He would have been content with Linda's realization of his betrayal in court, but this was the cherry on top. "Sorry to hear that. I'm out of town. What should I do?" His father-in-law was taken aback. "You're her husband. She's your wife." "No, we're divorced. The order was issued last week. She's been cheating on me with her travel companion." "What? What part is unclear?" Nick knew he was being harsh, but he didn't care. "I have video evidence. I can send it to you if you'd like." Silence followed. "She and I are done. You'll have to take care of her. She's not my responsibility anymore." "You did this," his father-in-law yelled. "Me? I've been in New York since Wednesday, celebrating the divorce. I understand you're upset, and I hope Linda recovers soon, but I think our conversation ends here." He ended the call. Nick realized the intensity of city life was overwhelming lately. He sent an email to Sven, respectfully telling him and the firm to go screw themselves. A quick search revealed an REI store in Soho, so Nick geared up with hiking and camping gear. Linda had never liked camping, so this was a chance to reconnect with his scouting past. The hotel stored his luggage for a fee, and soon he was off to the Adirondack Mountains to bond with nature. Luckily, he had his passport, just in case he had time for a side trip to Canada. As it turned out, he did. For the next 8 weeks, he kept his phone off. Initially, he thought someone had stolen his ex-wife's phone due to the barrage of unhinged messages, screaming, crying, and craziness. He listened to a couple before deleting the rest. The emails were just as wild. He hoped the person behind it got the help they needed. 8 weeks later, Nick met Frank and Harry for a drink. Just to clarify, Harry said as they sat down, "I terminated our attorney-client relationship after I gave you the divorce decree. I sent you a certified letter. You might not have seen it yet." "Not yet," Nick admitted. "It's been a shitstorm," Harry said. Or, as Frank put it, a shit typhoon. "I like that." "Shit everywhere," Frank added. "Lots of destruction." Harry ordered another bourbon. "You start, Frank," Harry said. "So, Monday morning, Mrs. Buford goes to the old house with her parents," Frank began. "We hadn't taken down the external camera yet. When she sees the vacant lot, she has a complete breakdown. Drops to her knees, sobbing. Goes into full fetal position. Then the work crew arrives, and she loses it again. And again when they see her face tattoos and start laughing. The text shows up nicely on camera: slut, whore, I love cock, all over her face, neck, and hands. And that's on top of the raccoon eyes from getting punched and the tape for the broken nose." Harry continued the story. "That afternoon, she and a couple of big firm lawyers showed up at my modest office, coming on strong. Since they didn't have an appointment, I made them wait for 15 minutes. I made sure my Glock was loaded and accessible in my desk. Thank God we're in Virginia, you know? 15 minutes later, they're all yelling at me, talking about emergency motions, bar complaints, and contempt proceedings. I have to admit, I had trouble not looking at the ink all over her face. It was done very clearly in red and blue ink, so it could be seen from a distance. When I was able to refocus, I asked what exactly the problem was. What statement in any of the pleadings was false? They all stopped and looked at each other. So, I asked if there was a dispute that your ex had committed adultery. They all said yes. So, I turned on the video, which I had queued up while they were waiting, and good old Linda is clearly bouncing up and down on the sexual organ of someone not her husband in the marital bed. They apparently hadn't reviewed everything in the case file yet. Everyone just looked embarrassed then. Then, Linda starts yelling that you didn't even give her a chance to explain. And I said you didn't care what the reason was, just that you did it. She recovers and starts going on about how she never agreed to let you sell the house and what was the story with you burning her wedding gown, photos, and album. That stuff was all her personal property. I showed her the copies of the powers of attorney, one of which was for the specific purpose of the sale of the home. I showed her the property settlement agreement, which gave you the right, at your sole discretion, to dispose of her personal effects, and told her she was lucky she had her clothes. I asked if she was denying it was her signature on the documents. She said no, but that she had never agreed to any of what they said. So, then I asked if her whole defense was that she had never read the stuff that she signed. I asked her to imagine how the cross-examination would go if she challenged anything in court. She stopped talking then. I also pointed out in the affidavit she signed where she admitted that her lover was upstairs at that very moment she signed, and I asked if it was untrue. That was when she passed out. Her attorneys tried reviving her, but I just called 911. She refused to go to the hospital with them. But then she started screaming about the tattoos and about her boyfriend getting beaten up, and I said that had nothing to do with you, as far as I knew, and you were out of town anyway. And maybe Dwayne had pissed off some other wife's husband by banging her or some other woman who thought Linda was taking Dwayne away from her. I told them they knew where the Fairfax Police Department was if they had a criminal case they wanted to discuss. Sorry, I missed all that. It improves, Harry remarked. They persisted, discussing filing a motion for reconsideration and such. That's when I informed them that earlier that morning, I had received an anonymous email containing links to several videos of Linda and Dwayne in your bed, resuming their activities before Paris. The email stated that these videos would be sent to everyone Linda knew, with the implication that you, Nick, were unaware and powerless to prevent it. It also mentioned your past assistance to them and their promise to protect you. They threatened to send the videos that very day if she didn't drop the matter. Are you aware of any of this? I've been out of town, Harry. After that, they left abruptly. No word from them since. And there have been no developments in the courthouse. Frank took over. They must have involved the police because a couple of detectives visited. They requested copies of the videos and the report. However, they lost interest later on. Neither Linda nor Dwayne could provide details about what happened. They only remember getting into a taxi at the airport, and the next thing Dwayne knew, he was in the hospital. Linda woke up in a seedy hotel, got punched, and ended up at the hospital. The hotel room was charged to her credit card, along with room service and the minibar. Nick added that the hotel manager confirmed that New York police checked his stay and contacted his friends, who verified his busy schedule. Apparently, Harry continued, your ex is holed up in her parents' basement undergoing laser tattoo removal. It's costly since they charge by the square inch, and she's covered head to toe. That's unfortunate, Nick remarked. Harry shot Nick a look, while Frank stifled a laugh. And as for Meathead? I hear he sustained serious injuries, Harry said. He'll need a lot of physical therapy, and his head's not in great shape. Multiple concussions might make it tough for him to find another paralegal job. Their firm let both of them go. Their relationship fell apart during the trip, affecting the entire arbitration. Mistakes were made, exhibits weren't ready, and witness outlines were flawed. They lost the case, and the client wasn't pleased. The firm had to make sacrifices to retain the client. Someday, Nick, you'll have to tell us how you pulled this off, Frank said. What, me? I'm just a Boy Scout. Maggie awaited him in the car. I'm a little envious. Nobody asked me about the documents I notarized or if she read them before signing. I was prepared to testify that I saw her review each one, but I couldn't determine how much time she spent on it. We can discuss this over dinner. I owe you and your non-existent boyfriend for helping me regain my freedom. Maggie gave him a pointed look as Nick drove. There's no boyfriend, you idiot. Really? Shut up and take me home so you can start apologizing. Okay, but I need to stop at the post office first. Why? I'm sending a postcard to a friend, Nick said, pulling it out of the glove compartment. It had the Boy Scout logo. I'm asking her if she feels safe now. Write your opinion in the comments. Remember, you're writing a story too, and it's up to you whether it's a good one or not. Thanks for watching and have a great day.